Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things and welcome to another bookish video. And today I wanted to do a review video of the recent BBC adaptation of Agatha Christie's The ABC Murders. So, I mentioned in another recent video, my recent theatre wrap-up that I did, that I'm going to stop doing non-reading wrap-ups, which I've been doing for the last few years, and instead I'm going to separate out some of the elements from that. But one thing I don't want to lose taking out those non-reading wrap-ups from my content is any reviews and thoughts of screen adaptations of books, because I love watching screen adaptations of books and I always have a lot of thoughts and my thoughts are often quite complicated, and I thought it would be quite fun to start a new kind of series on my channel which I'm going to call something like Book to Screen, probably, but I thought I would start this feature on my channel which I'll do every now and then when I watch a television adaptation or a film adaptation of a book that I find really interesting, probably usually only if I've read the book as well, otherwise I feel like I won't have enough to say, but I thought I would start doing these because it might be fun. So, before we get on to the television adaptation, I will tell you a little bit about the book, which I read back in January. The ABC Murders is one of Agatha Christie's Poirot mysteries. We follow the detective Poirot and his friend Hastings, who is the narrator in this, as Poirot investigates a series of crimes that seem to be based around the alphabet. So, Poirot receives an anonymous letter at the beginning of the book warning him that something bad is going to happen in a place beginning with A. Someone whose name begins with A then is murdered in a place beginning with A. Someone beginning with B is murdered in a place beginning with B. And whenever these murders occur, an ABC railway guide is left at the scene. And things kind of go on from there. It's really interesting, really compelling, very atmospheric and interesting, as Agatha Christie always is, and one that I just really flew through and really enjoyed the book of. One of the reasons why I read the book was in fact because there was a television adaptation coming out of it and I wanted to watch it. I think especially, in general, I don't necessarily mind watching television or film adaptations before reading the book, but I would prefer not to, and especially for something like an Agatha Christie or a murder mystery where the plot element is so important, I would like to read the book first. So I read the book and then I watched the television adaptation. Now, the television adaptation made quite a lot of substantial changes. So I want to talk a little bit about that today, because I find it quite interesting. There won't be any spoilers for the book or the adaptation. This is a spoiler-free video, as I'm intending all of my book-to-screen reviews to be. But anyway, I'm going to first talk about what I did really like about the television adaptation, and then I'll talk about what I liked rather a lot less. So, firstly, the production quality of this adaptation was wonderful. The look of it, the angles, the filming of it, the visual beauty, or sometimes gritty beauty, was really, really well done, and it was wonderfully put together. And the acting was absolutely incredible. Everyone in this put up a wonderful, wonderful performance. John Malkovich, I thought, acted very well. Rupert Grint was very good. Eamon Farren, who played Cust, was incredible. That actor was absolutely brilliant. And it was weird because when I first saw him appear as Cust, I thought, my goodness, they've chopped off rather a lot of years off that character's age. I'm pretty sure he's middle-aged in the book, but he was such a brilliant actor that I didn't care. He was just fantastic, and the kind of psychological complexity that he got through the acting was just wonderful and brilliantly, brilliantly acted. And as an adaptation, it hung together well, it was fun and interesting to watch. I feel like if I hadn't read the book, or perhaps more likely if I hadn't read any Agatha Christie, I would have liked everything about it. But there were a few issues here. In adapting the book to screen, they have cut out Hastings, who is the narrator of the ABC Murders, who is the narrator of a lot of different Poirot books. And one of the reasons why they cut Hastings out is because Hastings is sometimes comical, and they wanted to make it more dark, which I kind of get, but also bothers me because that's not what Agatha Christie is about. Agatha Christie is not a really, really gritty crime drama or a psychological thriller. Agatha Christie is cozy murder mysteries with a lot of dark themes under the surface, but the surface is bright and shiny cocktails, and that's why I love Agatha Christie. That's one of the things that is wonderful about Agatha Christie. They are dark and they are grim and they are psychologically complex, but they're also funny. They're so funny, and all the humour was just lost from this adaptation, and it makes me really cross because I think this is a really common thing at the moment when adapting books to screen. So many times I've seen Dickens books adapted to screen and all the humour is just gone, and humour is half of Dickens. It just really frustrates me that there's a trend now when adapting classics to screen that we will take out the humour elements as though we don't think they're kind of sophisticated enough. It really, really bothers me. Anyway, so that bothered me, that they took out Hastings and the humour. And I also didn't love the way Poirot was portrayed. As I said, John Malkovich I think was a really, really good actor. None of my problems with this adaptation were in the execution, they were all in the script and the direction, I suppose, because this adaptation effectively made it all about Poirot and made Poirot a tortured genius. And Poirot is not a tortured genius. Like, I haven't read that many Agatha Christie's. I've read sort of 11 or 12, but I've read enough Poirot novels to know that Poirot is not a tortured genius. That's not the point. All of the kind of backstory that they made up for Poirot in the ABC murders, I mean, like I said, I haven't read every Poirot, but I did a bit of research and I'm pretty sure none of it is anything to do with Poirot in the books and is completely made up, which I feel like you can't do when you adapt an Agatha Christie. Like, it's one thing to do that if you adapt one standalone book to screen, but when you're adapting a book and a character that is part of like a really big literary universe in a way, I feel like you can't just mess with them in that way. I don't know, it really bothered me. The thing is, for me, in both Poirot and Miss Marple, in both of Agatha Christie's like two main lead detectives, is that they're not like torture geniuses, they're not Sherlock Holmes, they're just small elderly people who are really clever, who nobody takes seriously because they're small and they're old. And the vision of Poirot that this adaptation gave was a very different vision of Poirot to Agatha Christie's Poirot. And I feel like Agatha Christie would have been quite confused if she had seen it. And also, like, one of the things I like about Miss Marple and Poirot books is that the books are usually focused on the mystery and the characters involved in the mystery rather than on Poirot and Miss Marple themselves. And making this adaptation so much about Poirot was really weird. They even made the kind of mystery much more closely linked to Poirot than it is in the book. Which I thought was weird. And they did some things with his character which really didn't fit with his character in the book. The one thing which really infuriated me is that within the television adaptation there were these scenes in which Poirot had like held pretend murder mystery parties several years before for the rich and famous, which is something, I mean, again, I haven't read every Agatha Christie, but from the Poirot books I've read, that is something Poirot would never do. If there is one thing Poirot takes very seriously, it is crime and it is murder, and it's not something to have a party with and have a joke about. That is something Poirot is like really serious about, so that upset me. And I also found the kind of introduction of the black shirts and kind of xenophobic feeling a slightly odd decision, because I don't think that's something that's really in the book, and again, maybe that's something that crops up in other Poirot books, and I feel like it was rather shoehorned into that adaptation in order to kind of make a topical point about modern comparisons with Brexit, which I didn't necessarily feel entirely worked because it doesn't really fit in the story because it's nothing to do with the book. And especially because, like, one of the main points in Poirot and Miss Marple for me is that neither of them are taken seriously because they're old. So the moment in this adaptation where one of the police officers were kind of laughing at Poirot having dyed his moustache black, that was right. People don't take Poirot seriously because he's old, but they don't not take him seriously because he's Belgian. In the Poirot books I've read, that's never a part of it, and I found that a slightly odd way to play it, because that's really not a part of the book. One other thing I did want to mention actually was changes that I didn't mind, because another thing that I've heard quite a lot of people complaining about online was the kind of way they like sexed up Agatha Christie. They made the character Cust a lot younger, partly so that there could be a kind of dynamic going on between him and a woman who there is definitely not a dynamic going on with in the book of that sort. I didn't really mind that, partly as I said because the guy playing Cust was so fantastic, and partly because it was done really well and nicely, and I didn't feel like it changed the book enough. And I suppose partly too because for me, I don't mind so much if a screen adaptation of an Agatha Christie messes with the characters were just in that book. It's when it messes with like a character like Poirot or Miss Marple, who are in many books, that it bothers me more, if that makes sense. So I think that's most of what I had to say about the ABC Murders adaptation. I have very mixed feelings on it. I really enjoyed watching it. I thought some of the plot lines were done fantastically. I thought the character of Cust was done brilliantly, and I thought it was all acted so well. But they took a lot of liberties with the book that I didn't like and bothered me. And they took a lot of liberties with Poirot's character, which I didn't like and which bothered me. So I have mixed feelings, but I'm really interested to know, those of you who've seen the adaptation and have read the book or have read other Poirot books, what you thought of it, especially those of you who've read more Poirot books than me. Did you enjoy the adaptation? What did you think of that unusual portrayal of Poirot, and were you also annoyed that they got rid of Hastings? Also, please let me know down in the comments what you thought of my first book to screen review and if you would like to see more of these on this channel. And that is all for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.